Welcome to the AI Brief from the YPO Technology Network. I'm Stephen Forte. Something shifted this week in how you are going to work with AI, and it arrived with no keynote, no countdown, and not a single fireworks headline. Here is what I will give you in the next 8 minutes. What Anthropic actually changed inside Claude and why the plumbing matters more than the announcement. The one shift in how work gets done that this quietly forces on all of us. And the 3 moves I would make before an always-on agent shows up on your team's desks. If you caught Friday's episode on the AI black box inside your company, Tuesto, the one you are accountable for but cannot see into, today is the sequel. Because that box just learned to run on its own schedule. Start with the facts, because the announcement was almost aggressively boring. Anthropic, the AI lab behind Claude, the assistant a lot of your people now use alongside or instead of ChatGPT, merged 2 things that used to be separate products. One was Claude Chat, the back and forth you already know. You ask, it answers, you copy the answer into a document, and you do the actual work yourself. The other was called Cowork, Claude's agent mode, where instead of answering a question, it goes off and does a whole task across your files and your tools, and comes back with the finished thing. As of last Monday, those 2 are no longer separate, one screen, one place for your projects. And in Anthropic's own words, handing Claude a task starts the same way a conversation does. That one sentence is the entire episode. Let me tell you why. For about 2 years, using AI has meant having a conversation. You are the one doing the work, and the AI is the smartest intern in the building who somehow never touches the deliverable. What changed last week is that the wall between asking a question and handing over the job came down. We are going to read everything today through that single lens. AI just moved from something you consult to something you assign. Here is the difference in plain terms, because it is the whole game. Chatting with AI is like asking a sharp colleague, "How would you approach this?" You get a good answer, and then you still open the spreadsheet, pull the numbers, write the email, and format the deck yourself. The unit of work is a response, and you are the one who turns that response into a result. Co-working is like telling that same colleague, "Handle this and show me when it's done," and you describe the outcome. Claude plans the steps, works across your real files, your email, your connected systems, and comes back with a working spreadsheet, a formatted document, a drafted reply, not advice about the work. The work, both of those already existed. What Anthropic did last week was delete the moment where you had to decide which one you were doing. And that moment mattered far more than it sounds. Until last week, to hand Claude a real job, you had to consciously leave the chat and open a separate mode, a different screen, a different mental gear, and decide in advance whether your request was big enough to be worth the trip. Every operator listening knows exactly what happens to a feature that lives one extra click away and asks you to justify using it. It goes unused. It becomes the treadmill in the spare bedroom. Give Anthropic genuine credit for the instinct here, and I mean it. The hardest problem in enterprise software has never been capability. It is the blank space between a powerful feature existing and a busy person actually reaching for it. They close that space by making delegation feel like typing a message. That is a real product decision, and most companies never get it right. The second change is under the hood, and it is the one your technology team should read twice. Claude's agent used to run on your laptop, which meant it stopped the second you closed the lid. Anthropic moved it into the cloud, so now you can start a task at your desk, check on it from your phone in the back of a car, and pick up the finished output later with your laptop shut the entire time. You can even schedule it. A task that runs at 6 a.m. every Monday, works through the weekend's email and news, and leaves the briefing on your screen before you've had coffee. No device on, no one at the keyboard. Sit with that, because it is a category change, not a convenience. You did not just get a smarter chatbot, you got a worker that runs on a clock instead of on your attention. Here is my read. The right mental model for this is not a better ChatGPT. It is a new hire who works the night shift, never sleeps, and has been handed a set of your logins. That sounds thrilling right up until you say the second half of the sentence out loud, has been handed a set of your logins. And remember that you would never onboard an actual human that way. Not without a defined scope, a manager, and an audit trail. Now, the part that reframes the whole thing, and it comes straight from Anthropic's own numbers. They studied 1.2 million anonymized sessions across more than 600,000 organizations. If you assumed all this agent business is mostly engineers writing code, the data says otherwise, and it is not close. Software development was 8.7% of usage. More than 90% of what people handed this thing was ordinary office work. The single largest category, at 33.4%, was business operations, reconciling expenses, pulling scattered updates into one status report, the administrative grind. Content and copywriting was another 16.4%. Anthropic even has a name for the winning category. They call it the work around the work, the tasks that sit inside every job but are almost no one's actual job, the status chase, the reformatting, the stitching of 5 tools into one document somebody needs by end of day, over 90%. At that point, it is not a coding tool with some Office users. It is an Office tool that happens to also code. You might be tempted to file all of this under user interface tweak. 2 menus became 1 menu. Who cares? That is the wrong read. And here is the tell. The interface is where a company shows you what it believes its product is actually for. Anthropic just decided that delegating work should be the default gesture, and asking a question should be the special case, not the other way around. The menu change is small. The bet underneath it is enormous. And they are not making that bet alone, which is how you know it is not a fad. Watch the speed. 2 days after Anthropic's change, OpenAI folded Codex, its coding assistant, directly into the ChatGPT app and launched a version aimed squarely at office work. Microsoft shipped its own always-running agent, Copilot Cowork, last month. Google has put agents directly inside Gmail, Docs, and Sheets. 4 of the largest technology companies on Earth are now racing for the same square of ground, and it is not the chatbot. As one report put it, the fight is no longer about who has the best chatbot. It is about who owns the place where the work actually gets done. When 4 giants converge on the same real estate inside the same 3 weeks, that is not a trend. That is a land grab. So if I were sitting in your seat this quarter, I would do 3 things. First, govern it like a hire, not a feature. Before anyone on your team points an always-on agent at your email and your files, decide what it is allowed to touch, what it must get a human to approve, and where it writes down what it did. You already do exactly this for a new employee's system access. This is that, except the employee works at 3 a.m. and never forgets a password. Second, pilot where the usage already is. Operations and content do not open with the flashy high-stakes case. Picture a $300 million distribution company, the kind plenty of you run, where the operations lead burns every Friday afternoon rebuilding the same Monday status report by hand from 6 inboxes in a spreadsheet. That is the pilot. It is half of real-world usage already, and a mistake there costs you a redo, not a lawsuit. Third, ask one uncomfortable question in your next leadership meeting. If a competitor's team is delegating the busy work while yours is still doing it by hand, how long until that gap shows up in your margins? You do not need the answer today. You need to have asked it before the answer arrives on its own. One honest caveat, because you have earned the skeptical read too. Those usage numbers are Anthropic's own, released by Anthropic, timed to a launch, and by most accounts ahead of a public offering. The direction is almost certainly right. The precision deserves a raised eyebrow. And notice how the language across this whole industry has quietly softened. From AI will replace your workforce to AI just handles the boring parts. That reframe is far easier to sell to a nervous board, which is precisely why you should read it as a sales posture and not a promise. The exposure did not shrink. The wording got friendlier. Here is the challenge I will leave you with, and it is not really about Claude. Open your own calendar from last week and count the hours your best people spent on the work around the work. The chasing, the formatting, the stitching, not their judgment, not their relationships, the connective busy work that nobody was hired to do and everybody does anyway. For the first time, that number is something you can hand to a machine that works while you sleep. The tools are ready. The only open question is whether your operation is built to hand that work off or still quietly proud of doing it by hand. For 2 years, AI waited for your next question. This week, it started doing the job. That is the YPO Tech Network AI brief for Monday, July 13th. I am Stephen Forte. If this was useful, send it to a fellow member. I will be back Tuesday with more. Until then, stay sharp.